Whether it's something in your life that's present right now, that you know it's time to let go of, to surrender so you can become the next version of you, or whether it's something that you know in your heart that it's time for you to move into, a compelling future for you to move towards. Most people wait and wait and wait for a painful event to come into their life to force them to change. But there's a different way for you to allow yourself to build enough power, enough inspiration in your body and your heart and your mind and your soul, where you don't wait for something painful to be your fuel for change. You move from inspiration into the life that you want, into your dream life. So on this podcast episode, I'm joined by my best friend and breathwork facilitator to dive into why we keep ourselves stuck in that cycle of waiting for pain always to change. What we can do to start shifting that. What is this new paradigm of change that we're talking about? And how? What are the tools and systems and frameworks and new perspectives that you can put on your tool belt of life to be able to live from this new paradigm of changing from a place of inspiration and power into a life beyond your wildest dreams? So let's dive in. Yeah, change is inevitable, but how we handle it is completely up to us. And a lot of people have one way to handle change, which is to wait and wait and wait until something uncomfortable enough forces them to do something different than what they have done up until now. You have seen that a zillion times in me, in yourself, in so many people. Why do we do that to ourselves?
So is your question, why do we wait for more pain until we start creating change in our lives? Yeah, I'm not sure if it's a straightforward answer, but I think a part of it is just how connected are you already to your current reality? And I think if you're more connected and a bit more aware, you probably don't need to wait for that much change, or that much pain, before you create that change. But I think maybe a part of it is just conditioning. And we get habituated to having life in certain levels, parts of our life at a certain standard. And for some reason, we've got used to needing like a big wake-up call before we start moving in a different direction.
What do you mean by we get conditioned to do that?
Yeah, so I think, I'm not sure if I have an explanation for what I'm about to say, but I noticed that a lot of people seem to be somehow almost more wired by nature to be motivated to move away from pain rather than running towards pleasure. So I guess in more situations, people are used to, you're not going to create change because you want to be better. You create change because you don't want to be as bad as you are. And I don't know if that's something that is like a survival thing, or if it's actually just conditioning the way that we operate as a society. But I would definitely say that let's look for the ways of how we can just start be conditioned to move towards more pleasure and happiness and freedom and joy, rather than having the reward of pain to show us the way.
Yeah. Damn. That's actually bringing up something for me. I had a conversation during dinner with some friends recently, and one of them said something that really stuck with me. She said, you know that you're handling change in a way that's empowering if you're going for what's next before you feel ready for it. Because most of us, like for example in relationships, we wait for things to get way, way bad before we leave. or before we do something about fixing it and taking the relationship to the next level.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't really matter what the external circumstance is, we just wait for it to build up and up and up. Yeah, what you're saying really resonates with me. I'm curious, like for me, I know that a story or a season of my life that really anchors me in that is when I left my previous place, and you know this. It's like, I love that place. Literally, the only reason why I left is because I had a calling to go travel. And that to me, I think was the first time in my life that I handled change, just purely from a place of inspiration. And like, I love that place, still do. It's just, I knew that I was meant to travel. I'm curious if you have any stories of people you've worked with or from yourself, so that it makes it like relatable for people to understand why it is that we get habituated, like to the comfort of waiting for the pain, but what it can look like when it's different.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't remember any super particular story, but I think there's just this aspect that we get very familiarized with something, and sometimes it could be you get familiarized with what's good, but I think as humans we just have a need to evolve, we have a need to grow, and when we get too comfortable, that's usually when we start taking things for granted, or we just start showing up as half of who we can be, and I think that's when you stop giving more of what you could have to give, and the situations start, either they accumulate enough to the point that they go into bad or worse. But I do relate to what you're saying, that sometimes it's just contradictory when you start motivating yourself more just from a calling for the desire to be better without necessarily having to be bad. You're just choosing to raise the standards of your life. Sometimes it's hard because you don't have a logical explanation. And one example that I have is that I was in a job which I enjoyed, but I started to feel disconnected from it. I just didn't feel like it was my thing anymore. And it was hard at that time to give myself the permission to go for something else, just because I knew that I was still okay. I was good. I wasn't bad. I wasn't in pain. I wasn't suffering. And it was even harder to have the people around me, the people that I had to talk with to make that transformation happen, understand that. Right, because it wasn't something super logical. I just had that need to go for something different, where I felt that I was going to have more space to output my creativity and my gifts, and yeah.
Yeah, for sure. There's I've found that for most of us, there are two types of pain that we get to go through, and I'm really, really interested in diving into both of them with you. And pain can be discomfort or need for change, like whatever word we want to use to describe it. But the second one is the one we're talking about and that we're going to dive deep into, which is the pain that we cause to ourselves because we know that there's something that we need to change or do or go for, whatever it is, and we postpone it or don't do it. And I think we would be remiss, especially with the tools you and I have, to dive into that conversation without, even if it's just for a few minutes, addressing the first type of pain, which is life. Life is the full spectrum, it's your best day and your worst day and everything in between. And I think there's substance there too, because pain can be a catalyst. Hard times can be a catalyst, just like good times. If someone's listening to this and hearing, like, okay, like I get it, like I also want to change from a place of inspiration, but I'm actually just, my circumstances are hard right now. What would you say to that person, or what suggestions or guidance or perspectives would you offer in that case?
Yeah, I think I would say that is you can see pain as a guide, as a teacher, because in a way pain forces you to take a look at things, forces you to stop, it forces you to slow down. And it could be a physical pain in a part of your body, and literally it's like your body saying, hey, I'm here. and maybe you didn't even notice that part of your body before.
Mm.
And the same could happen for pain in a relationship, pain in a situation, pain in whatever is happening in your life. And instead of just trying to make it mean something bad, trying to look for the opportunity that is there, which is to slow down and stop and be with it and feel it. And as you said, it's a range. And I think so often we just have this idea that we want to always be happy, to always be good. And that's amazing, but the truth is that life is everything. And I think that the more that we run away from the pain that is in front of us, the more that it's just going to be postponed, the bigger it's going to become, and the more it lingers, it just grows and grows, and it starts taking more space in your life. So I would say that the approach is to rather not from a place of self-sacrifice or self-torture, but to actually just see the gift of sitting with the suffering that you have in front of you, because for sure on the other side there's probably going to be a lot more of what you've been looking for, that freedom, that space, that opportunity, that whatever it is.
You just dropped something huge. Okay. What I heard you say is that the pain or suffering or challenge that someone might be going through, and I think here a great distinction is we're talking about emotional pain more than other types of pain, because you can have physical pain. I think we're addressing more like maybe emotional pain and mental pain, spiritual pain. I just heard you say that whatever it is that we want in life, or the next step, is not in running away from that, but in diving in. What does that mean?
Yeah, my perspective is that it's almost like a flag, right? It's probably not going to be a coincidence where specifically in your life this pain is coming from and related to what it is that you are feeling it, right? So it's definitely an indicator of something that has stopped being aligned. Maybe a relationship that is in a phase that, as you were describing, it's just not working. Or maybe you're doing something that it's starting to hurt you because it's just not who you are anymore. And a lot of times this pain comes just from continuing to do the things that are not aligned, right? And the thing is, I think sometimes we're so habituated to have that feeling of just pushing through, right? And you say that, no, pain is good, right? And I think this is the one side of what we're talking about, which is, yes, okay, pain is a teacher, but that doesn't mean that you should go specifically look for pain and let's purposefully have more pain in my life, right? I think it's probably already there, and you just be with it, right? I think, as you said, a lot of it could just be the emotional, the spiritual, not necessarily the physical, but sometimes it could get to that point. It's just about diving into the pain, sitting with it, feeling it at the very core of it, being with the emotions of the pain. And more often than not, there's certain wisdom there that if you just keep running in circles and running away from it, you're going to miss that. So most likely you're just going to keep repeating the situation or the pattern, and you miss the point in a way.
I have a great example that might make it relatable for people. So one thing that became painful a couple of months ago for me is, for 10 years I haven't had like a regular 9 to 5, so I don't have a reason to wake up consistently at a time in the morning. So my sleep schedule has been all over the place, especially like with different time zones, working with different time zones and all of that. And so my body has begun, like towards the beginning of this year, to feel like the almost like a fatigue of simply not having a consistent sleep schedule. And for me personally, I was conditioned to face that by pushing harder and like sleeping less and like just continuing to push. And what I'm hearing you say is that that's actually the opposite, that's me running away from the pain. That's me not facing, because there's a reason why I'm not sleeping properly. And this is actually a great example, because for me, when I started digging in, what I found out is the reason why I haven't had that consistently is I had a belief, a story, a conditioning that I needed to overreach in work. I always needed to be going that extra mile, going beyond what I have to give, and that rest was not even secondary, like it came in 10th place. And I I really resonate with that it was when I started doing that inner work that brought up all the things and emotions for me to handle, of allowing myself to have rest and to have both. Like, I still perform well. It's just balancing that. It was the inner work that unlocked the transformation in the outside world, rather than like continuing to run away from the pain. Like, does that reflect what you're sharing?
Yeah, I think it's exactly that, right? So it was never about sleep or not sleep, right? It was just that you had this belief that you couldn't sleep more because you didn't have the space to rest. Like, you had to actually be more productive so that you could feel enough, so that you could do more. And by you giving yourself that space to sit with that, to go through the inner inventory of checking and finding those beliefs, having that awareness, and I guess feeling the pain that was associated to it, it gave you the freedom of choice, that now you understand that that's not true. And now you can choose from a place of self-love to have a consistent sleep schedule, which in return actually probably made you a lot more productive in the first place, and you have a lot more freedom and time in your life. So you ended up achieving exactly what you thought you had to do from a place of punishment, almost like self-punishment, but now you get to do it from a place of self-love. And it's a lot easier and effortless. So I guess that's the whole point of what we're discussing.
Yeah, and as you know, I've been loving my naps. It's been going pretty well.
Exactly.
I really feel like this is something important, which is why we're doing an episode around it. We are programmed in 1,000 different ways, probably every day, to think that pain is the only catalyst, is the only fuel for change. What does it mean for you to create change or transformation, big and small, everything in between in your life, from a place of inspiration?
Yeah. For me, I think it's a lot about taking a look at where I'm at. And there's not necessarily anything right now in my life that is just crazily wrong and super misaligned. And I think this is where most people stop, right? Because we're conditioned. So, okay, I'm okay, so I'm just going to stay here. And I'm not saying that you should always be looking for the next thing, but this is usually when things just start getting stale eventually. And if they're stale enough, then that's when the pain comes up. And I think it's just about loving myself enough to choose to continuously raise the standards of the different parts of my life, just because I know that there is more to life. I want to live more. I want to create even more epic experiences, right? And I think lately it's just been about, instead of looking for what's bad, what is causing pain, and that gave me the drive and the clarity to where I want to move, it's just been more about, like, for example, just right now, like taking a look at the previous month and like, what really made me feel good? What was epic? What do I want more of? And that being the thing that really pushes me forward to, oh my God, I can't imagine what it's like to have twice the amount of this type of moments and experience, and have even more of this emotion, these freeing moments with people that I love, doing the things that I do. I think it's a lot about that. It's just, how can I do even more of what already is good? Or how can I create the space to find more of what I don't even know that makes me feel good?
Yeah, you can't really move from a place of inspiration towards whatever is next in your life if you keep looking at everything that's going wrong and not working and everything you wish was different. And this is really that second type of pain we're talking about. This is us making it easier on ourselves rather than making it harder, and continuing to put ourselves in situations where we continue to require something to be quote unquote bad, which is just life guiding us into where we're supposed to be before we make that decision in the first place. What I've learned is that most people, when they hear these things, it just clicks, it just makes sense, and then it becomes a skills conversation, which is like, how? So let's dive into the how. What are some of the skills that you have noticed or explored with yourself or learned that really help someone navigate that uncertainty? Because it's a lot more uncertainty, like that space of creating from a place of feeling inspired to move towards something?
I think a part of it is just, just like we have shadow work and working on, as you say, looking for the things that they're not working so well, looking for the parts of you that are in pain, looking for your wounds and your trauma and understanding all of that. There's the other side of the equation, which is just looking for the good and expanding that, spending more time with that. And one of them is, while there is a certain level of uncertainty, as you said, is just spending time analyzing, not from a mental perspective, but it could be journaling, it could be just meditation, just sitting with it. Again, as I was saying, kind of just looking at what is good for you, right? And what inspires you, what moves you forward. And the thing is that most of the times, when there's something that inspires you, it clicks, right? So so it could be just literally setting yourself up for success and having more of that in your life. Or if it's a song, if it's a video, just immersing yourself more often in this. And I think the other side is almost like the counter action or the negative action, which is, you were just asking things that I've noticed with people that I worked, and one of the things that I noticed that happens the most often, and this still happens with me, and I guess it happens with everyone, is the hardest part of growth sometimes, it's not the awareness part, it's also not necessarily the working through that, is when you're just at the cliff of kind of becoming a different version of you, but you're just so used to being a certain way, you're so used to certain behaviors that you continue to go back to them. And I think there's this stage where, let's say you want to stop doing something like a habit that that is just toxic for you. Usually it starts with awareness, and then it gets to a point where you've done enough work, you've processed it, and maybe this habit was helping you like just fill in a void, and now you don't need that anymore. But you're just used to do it. So you kind of keep going back to it. And I think this is where you have to understand that if you're taking something out, there's space. And there's a time to just be with that space, but I think there's a time where you will have to fill that space. And if you don't choose something that is better, what's going to be easier and almost automatic is to fill with the same thing that you were doing before. And I think this is really where you can focus, which is, okay, I've done so much work to create this space. Let me choose things that really inspire. Let me choose things that are positive, that make me feel good, that nurture me. And I think this is one of the main points of actions. It's, you've identified what inspires you. You've worked on the things that were being toxic. You've let go of the pain. So now it's time to just fill life with beautiful experiences that really move you forward.
I'm so happy you brought that up. I'm gonna look people in the eye as I say what I'm about to say, because you're touching on something that I think is what holds most people back. Because like most people watching this, like they're growth oriented, they're gonna wanna if they hear that they can change from a place of other than pain, 99% of people are gonna react with excitement, like hell yeah, let's go. And I find that this is where they get stuck, because there's a term that is like international and official for what you described, which is being human. Literally, I like anyone on the planet I've ever met at some point, like we have habits that don't serve us. And hopefully, like if you're on a trajectory of growth, what used to be a really toxic habit like many years ago, now the thing that doesn't serve you is like, I really want to optimize my sleep. But it's still there. There's still something. And so I'd love for us to really put ourselves in the shoes of someone who's listening to this and is like thinking about something in their life that is like really visceral. And I can use myself as an example, but if you can like give suggestions or guidance or perspective, or even like questions or challenge, whatever comes up for you, of how someone can really navigate that. Because that's like, for example, here I am, my sleep is inconsistent, I feel tired, I feel exhausted. I have begun, so I'm not at step 0, like I've begun like learning about how to optimize my sleep. I've begun having the conversations at work and handling what I need to handle to create space so that I'm not always in overwhelm and burnout. But, and this is a real example, sometimes I have nothing else to do, but the habit is still there of before sleep, I play chess. It's something that I find really fun, and if I have a hard time falling asleep, like I go play chess. But like, is there something else I could be doing? Like, are there more powerful tools? Like, if you can really put yourself in the shoes of someone in real time struggling to make those changes, is there anything you can offer for them to make it easy on themselves?
So are you talking specifically about how you're handling making those changes, or the practical side of the steps that you need to do to, say, become a better sleeper?
No, sleep doesn't matter. It's just an example.
No,
It's more like
I
the
know it's an example.
overarching-
I'm just using, do you mean specifically like the actual steps that you have to take to create that change in your life, and you're struggling with having the clarity of the steps?
If you have steps, love steps.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just trying to frame the question in my mind. I would say that I would always go back to step one first, right? Which is having the clarity of the change that you want to make, right? So for you, it's about sleep in this case. And I think what it's easy sometimes to happen is you get lost because you're wanting to make this change so much that sometimes you even forget the why. That would be the first thing for me to remain connected, is the why you're making this change, because that connects you again to the good part, right? Yeah. I guess really we're talking about, you don't want to be a better sleeper because it hurts you not to sleep. You want to be a better sleeper because you can feel what it's like when you've slept good, right? And the amount of energy that you have available, right? So again, I think it's just this reframe of pain to inspiration. And I think just that alone helps you not to lose track of why you're creating this change. And then I think the other side of it is just the humility to understand that there's always going to be something in your life, as you were saying, right? And maybe before it was about not having your entire life in a complete state of wreckage. And now it's just, oh, I'm pretty amazing. I just want to optimize this little thing. And I would say that this is where the same conditioning of being motivated by pain can come up, which is the distortion of I have to do more, I have to do more, I have to do more, I have to do more. And I think there's a side of it which is also having the compassion to understand that it's a journey, and as you said, you've started, you're not necessarily a beginner, but it's a process. And I think a side of it is, if you continue to remain connected to where you want to go, usually that alone, that tends to give you the clarity of the next step and the next little step. And I think it's just focusing on the small steps. Like you identified, okay, maybe I have these things that I do before bed that they don't help me a lot. But the truth is that if you hadn't done them, you wouldn't know, right? So I think it's also that curiosity and experimentation mindset that helps you understand what's the next little step.
Yeah. So it's like if I'm someone hearing this and I'm thinking about the job I want to change, or the relationship I want to improve, or the big change I want to make in my lifestyle, it's like I start by getting clear on, why am I doing this in the first place? Why does this matter? And that's the anchor, because that's where you get the fuel from. And what we're conditioned to do is precisely I need to stop playing chess because that's wrecking my sleep. We're conditioned to, like, I need to stop this habit, and there we are, focused on what's going wrong. And so step one is like to go back and be like, oh, the reason why this change matters to me, and like to connect with the vision of the impact it's going to have. And from that place, to be okay with figuring it out, to know that the point is not to have it all figured out. The point is to take the next step and the next step and the next step and the next step. That makes sense.
Yeah, and I think part of it is, it's exactly what you were describing, you know, by connecting to the why. I just saw someone saying this the other day, which is, before you set a goal, ask yourself, what do you want to feel around that, right? Because I think it's so easy to get stuck in the practical side of it. I want to make more money, I want to get this house, I want to do this, I want to do that. And you forget why, right? And when you're creating change, I guess there's a whole cliche that it's not about getting to the top of the mountain, it's about the journey, but you know, still be okay with the reward of getting to the top of the mountain, because the view is beautiful and amazing. But this is where we can create that mindset shift, as you're saying, that instead of focusing on the wrong, it can just be how can I have more fun? How can I make it easier? How can I make it effortless while you're doing these changes in your life?
Let's talk about that, because you can't, like, we can't thrive in an energy of survival. We can't thrive if we're living in fight or flight. One of my favorite experiments I've ever heard about is, like, and you know this, I'm just going to share. Scientists took two plants, exact same plant, exact same soil, exact same lighting, exact same watering, like everything exactly the same, only one thing was different. Every day they would go there, and one plant they would compliment, they would like caress it gently, tell it how beautiful it is. The other one they would slap the leaves and tell it that it sucked and it was ugly and all that stuff. One plant went on to die, the other one thrived. Literally the only thing that's different is like the energy behind it. And that always makes me reflect, not even on how am I doing to others, but how am I interacting with myself?
Yeah.
On a day-to-day, like what are my thoughts on my day-to-day? And that really came up for me when you were sharing about connecting with the why. It feels like pouring a lot of rich energy into the change I want to create. Why is it that is so important in order to be able to thrive and step into your dream life? And why is it that people simply cannot step into their dream life and thrive if they're always in a state of survival?
Yeah, I think it kind of goes back to the same idea of, are you trying to create change to move away from pain or to run towards just pleasure, joy? And that's something what you were describing that I relate so much, because I can notice that a lot of the change that I was creating myself was still from a place of just self-hatred, an illusion of it, of course, but it was almost like a punishment that I'm not good enough yet, so let me change more, let me become better, let me take away this part, let me feel more suffering, right? So it became like a never-ending race of me against myself. And it still comes up sometimes, what you're saying, like in the way that I'm speaking to myself or the way that I'm speaking to others. And it's what you said, right? Because if you speak to yourself with harshness, your reaction is to contract. And as you contract, that's also what you're going to receive from life. If you speak to yourself with love, compassion, kindness, you soften, right? So it's also expected that that's the outcomes and the results that you get in your life, right? And I think that's when there are the expectations of, I want to be there, I want to go there. And we put so much pressure on ourselves, and really it's still the same pattern. It just feels more elevated because we're talking about growth, and we use the excuse that it's spiritual growth, or, I'm changing myself, right? But there's still a certain level of hitting the plants, slapping the leaves, rather than loving them and caressing them.
Yeah. That feels like the perfect place to bring this to an end, because I think it just ties it all together. Like the reason why it's not just smoother, it's incredibly exciting to change from a place of inspiration, is, again, there's the pain in life that we can only become more skilled at handling. All of us have had that. Like, it's things that happen to us that we have no control over, other than how we react to them, how we handle them. I think everyone can think of so many examples of that. But like anything that is not that, the reason why it matters to change from a place of inspiration is for not just for the outcome, not just to get to where we want to go, but the journey is so much more fun. And it's like, if you had to choose between a journey that is horrendously hard and a pain in the ass, or something that, again, with the full spectrum of life, but that is genuinely enjoyable.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's learning how to reward yourself with good things rather than the feeling of getting out of pain.
Yeah. All right, man. Thanks for always being down for crazy adventures. Thanks to Miguel for helping us record this. It's been a joy.
Yes, it is.
Thank you so much for watching. I trust this episode was valuable to you. And if in some way, shape, or form it resonated with you, it hit home for you, please take a moment to hit the like button, to subscribe to the channel, and to share this video with someone in your life that you care about. If you want to keep watching more, check out this video, and I'll see you in the next one.